All right, looking good, crowd. Good crowd for after lunch. I want to do a quick show of hands. How many of you are a first-time founder? First time. Excellent. How many repeat founders? All right, another question. How many of you think you have a great product? That should be everybody, right? Yeah.
I hope that's everyone.
Yeah, I think so. How many of you think that's enough to launch a successful business? All right, everybody's in the right place. Good. You all know that great businesses need great products, and they have to figure out a way to get to market. With AI, obviously, that's never been easier, but it's also made a lot of the existing channels that we've been using extremely noisy. As a journalist, I know this all too well. I get way too many emails. So, first question to Alison. Has AI slop killed email as a go-to-market channel?
All right, we'll jump right into AI slop. Anyway, well, thank you for having me here, Alison Wagonfeld from Google Cloud. I hope that AI slop is not part of anybody's go-to-market plan in this group. And I don't think it's killed email marketing, but it certainly has created, there's certainly a higher bar to get people to open everything up, and I think that's our job of creating platforms and tools and creating filters in Workspace to be able to screen out some of that AI slop. But I feel like that's really where we're going right now, is into that next phase of AI development, where there was so much experimentation going on for the last year and a half, and now refining. And as marketers, we always have to have like metrics, what works. And ultimately, if you have the right metrics, you're going to screen out AI slop because it's not going to work. And then therefore, it will be, it will stop being self-perpetuating that way.
Yeah, yeah. Max, let's maybe take a step back a little bit. What's changed in the last 2 years? Because it feels like go-to-market has changed maybe more in the last 2 years than maybe in the decade before.
Absolutely. I mean, you could do obviously more with less than ever before. To the email point, even in the past, you wouldn't be able to uncover the amount of research that you can uncover today that you can now. So I had a SVP of sales at my previous company, Outreach, and we were just talking about prospecting and this very topic. And he's like, anyone can write a better cold email today than I could have 2 years ago. And I've spent like my entire career on this. And the reason why is because I could never find out as much information as you can today. The stuff that was buried on, page 10 of a search is now easily referenceable. Things that were buried in Twitter threads. One of the most successful campaigns we ever had at Outreach was we were trying to get into, I think it was VMware, and we couldn't find a single personal thing about the key stakeholder. And we ended up sitting in a meeting together. Everybody's talking. I'm sitting there scrolling through her Twitter till like 2016. This is like 3 years ago. And we've one non-corporate tweet, and it was a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, and that she also had went to Penn State, and at the time James Conner was the running back for the Steelers, who also went to Penn State. And so we sent her some Steelers James Conner swag, and we get the email back. Okay, I'll have the meeting. I'll bring my team on to the meeting. But that's the type of thing that you could now, find in the snap of a finger if you type in the right prompt that you had to have a human that was really dedicated to go find previously. So I think there's way more you can do now. You can spin up custom landing pages to your ICP in seconds without technical talent that you couldn't do previously.
Yeah. You said something when we were talking earlier about this, maybe a little bit provocative, where you said you could just hire some YC guys to like spin up a marketing campaign or go to market.
I think this day and age, certainly for early stage marketing, it's incredibly important you have somebody who understands the technical side of marketing and just technical talent in general and can learn the marketing side of things. I think if you have great advisors around you, you can learn kind of some of the tried and true playbooks. Those things haven't gone out the window. I think it's still necessary that you have a general understanding of how and why certain things work in marketing, but definitely being able to understand how to write prompts, how to be a little bit more technical. You can get so far with so much less now running a marketing org than in the past.
Yeah. Marc, at OpenAI, what are you hearing from startups? What do they want?
Yeah, so my day job is working with startups that are building with this technology, building with AI, building on top of OpenAI's models. And we work with them primarily in that lens of like how are they using our technology. But we have a window into some of how the most innovative uses of AI inside the business more generally. I think one of the things, building maybe on the email question, is like the degree of personalization and signal following that you can do with AI is differentiated now versus what was even possible in the past. So it means, maybe your emails are actually more targeted to the actual ICP that you have, or the individual that is the right individual, and it's not, a big blast with a spray and pray, but it's being very focused and following that intent. We're using signals around, social media, the web, others, that AI combined with search and other tools is like really, really powerful to do that. And then on top of that, it's like how can you personalize the actual message so that who's receiving it is really getting something that's very intended for them and is actionable. So I think there's like a movement of, yes, you can do more with less, but you can also be very focused with how you do it. The other thing that we're seeing a lot of companies do is sort of adopt a new tool stack, and I think there's tools in particular around enriching leads. So you think about inbound or building outbound lists. Be able to actually not just say, hey, give me all the companies of this size in this geography, which is maybe how we would have done this in the past, or query some static database of repository of companies to try to find a big set that you can go blast. Now we're seeing companies use tools like Clay and others that allow you to like bring AI into the research phase to actually say, okay, I don't just care about companies of a certain size. I actually care if they have a headquarters in New York and a second office in Sao Paulo. Or I care if they're a B2B company that has AI kind of built into the core of their product. That is a very specific ICP that you can actually target and have your inbound leads qualified against and scored automatically with a lot more precision than you could have in the past. And for outbound, it means you can filter down to the actual outbound you want to do to the highest intent target. So it may mean like fewer outbound messages, but a much higher conversion once you have those messages out or outbound campaigns. So those are the kinds of things that we're seeing really innovative teams do, is like take AI into the running of their go-to-market function.
Yeah. Now, Alison, you've been in marketing for a while, and you have a lot of experience running campaigns and thinking about strategy and stuff like that. You maybe have a different perspective on this, right? Like, maybe in your world, marketers get supercharged by AI, right? And like, whereas on the flip side, it's like, if you cut humans out of the loop, like, what's missing?
Yeah, this is a question I was just thinking about, Max, as you're talking about, like if you have a good YC technologist, you're good. And I think the craft of marketing is still very much required. We think of it in our team as this concept, and with all the startups we work with, as this bilingual type of workforce, where you certainly need the AI knowledge, the AI curiosity, we think of like marketing technologists in a sense, but also understanding what are like the core purposes of marketing and being able to understand customer insights and be able to do research and be able to test and learn and understand what great creative looks like, and really think about the concept of full funnel marketing. I think of email marketing as being like just one tool in the toolbox. And certainly we can get much better at personalizing marketing, at personalizing emails. But if we don't think about it as the full funnel and all of the ways to do surround sound on social and all the ways to capture with influencers and all of the other pieces of the puzzle, then you may miss the broader purpose of what marketing is to create pull and be able to create interest in your product offerings.
This is a question maybe for all of you, but along those lines, is there a channel that people should be focusing on these days?
From my standpoint, it's very much of a multi-channel test and learn approach. And I think what's different now is testing historically had been extraordinarily expensive. To test creative, test messages, to do live focus groups, to bring things in. And also used to take like 6-8 weeks. The concept that you can do all of the testing in minutes sometimes with synthetic focus groups and others, you can just get out there with so many more messages faster. And so then you can really think more holistically about what metrics am I driving for, and how can I use the funnel to get there.
What are you telling your portfolio companies? Like, they have limited resources, Max, right? Like, what's the first thing they should chase down?
Yeah, so it depends what stage they're at in the company. So, one of the things that we come in and help with is early on in your business, you get design partners. Maybe you have a friend at another company. They're going to help you build. You got to make sure that you have a budget holder attached to that. So maybe it's their boss or whatever it is. And then you're going through that process and you're saying, okay, if we build this, is this helpful for you? Are these the key pieces of functionality in the product that you want to see? If we do that, does this outcome make sense for you? What are the key success metrics you need to see there? Okay, and if we hit those success metrics, what would you be willing to pay for a product like this? And then as they start to build that product out, make sure they go through that kind of path and keep checking back in with the design partner on how they're progressing. Eventually you get to a place where you can go through a paid pilot. Maybe that's a 90-day paid pilot with your first 10 customers, making sure that you're attached to those success metrics for that paid pilot, and that once that converts to an annual contract based off the success metrics that you guided towards and the price that you had already pre-agreed upon earlier in that process. I think if you do all that well, you end up with your first couple paid customers. Essentially, you get 10 or a dozen of those whatsoever. And then how do you go from 10 to 100? How do you scale that up from there? So the first part of that is very formative and foundational to the rest of it. So making sure you nail that, you make sure you nail product market fit, obviously, first and foremost. Second thing is you can start to do some data lookalike across the first 10 customers, whether it's the ICP, so the ideal customer profile of the company or the individual at that company that you're working with. So this is the persona inside the business that I want to be working with. These are the types of companies that'll buy the product. And then how do you then go and extrapolate that out and say, okay, well, how do I build cohorts of companies that look like the companies that are already our customers? So I think that's the next step. The one thing that's changed very recently, I guess in the last 2 years with the amount of research that you have at your fingertips is, to a certain degree, you're able to, I guess, ramp up that so much faster. I mean, you can almost take your value prop and use that as a prompt and then look for companies that have expressed that they are having the problem that you solve, and then go out and find those companies. And you'd be surprised, I mean, how many companies actually vocalize this, whether it's through social media, through earnings call, transcripts, whatever it is, through blog posts on their corporate blogs, and you would never be able to find that without being able to insert that prompt the same way that you can today. But I like that that's one way you can almost like flip that funnel from having to kind of almost take this hypothesis of like the data lookalike and say, okay, we're going to guess this is what our ICP looks like. We're going to go find more companies like that. You should do it that way, but then you can also do it the other way where it's like, okay, we're going to take the research, high-level research, and say this is the problem. Our product is solving the problem that these people are all having. And so now you can go build a database of those types of companies and reach out to them with a very targeted email or message that says, hey, I see that you're having this problem based on referencing this article or whatever it is. Here's how we solve it.
That's interesting, and I don't want to suggest that people not go through the product market fit exercise, but it's almost like a push versus a pull look at how you think about who your market is and who your customer is and then how to reach them.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's all low-hanging fruit. I mean, I think there's the tried and true process, which is kind of the first thing that I took you through, and now there's the research side of the process, which seems like very easy low-hanging fruit to me, considering that it's understanding how to write good prompts and then leveraging your kind of value proposition in that process and understanding who out there in the universe is having that problem that it's relevant to.
Yeah. Along those lines, Marc, like what's some of the most innovative uses of AI that you've been seeing young startups use?
In go-to-market.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, well, if you zoom out, like I think if you had asked 2 years ago, there's a lot of folks who have said, okay, I'm going to have an AI marketer, an AI go-to-market agent, and it's going to go off and do everything end-to-end autonomously. And like, I think largely we've seen that not be how startups, the most innovative startups, are using AI. They're bringing it in and usually having a human in the loop, kind of using this as an efficiency gain or a way to kind of get a lot more out of their time and focus on the highest order bits. So I think in the enterprise, still people tend to want to buy from a human and have a really strong relationship. And so that means that behind the scenes, we'll see founders and sales teams kind of using these tools to make part of like the way that they do their jobs much more efficient. It might be very simple, starting with meeting prep and just having every meeting of the day served up to you of kind of what was the prior context, what was the last Gong recording we had, and what were the key takeaways that we're supposed to follow up on, and what's the latest in our kind of database and CRM that is relevant for today's meeting. That's like the table stakes today. And then from there, it's like, okay, maybe we do want to have more power behind this that's actually giving me tools in real time as I'm having conversations throughout the day. And so I think we're seeing kind of a range, but what I've seen more of, rather than the end-to-end handed off, I think the agents are getting better, but like still there's work to be done, both at the model layer on our side and also in how companies build on top of them to create an agent that can run and do things more autonomously. Right now, that's happening more in the research, the prep, the web search, and the human is still getting involved to sort of make the decisions and do a lot of the end work with customers.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of a pattern that I think will evolve, I'm sure, over the coming years as the models are getting better. But that's largely what we're seeing.
Yeah. Is that similar to what you're seeing, Alison, or kind of how you're thinking about it?
Yeah, I've seen a lot more of stitching together. I definitely seen, even in the last 2 months or so, the agentic use cases going up quite a bit. I mean, we just launched Gemini Enterprise, which I know probably sounds very big for a startup, but there's actually a Gemini business version of it that now allows you to use the pre-built agents that Google's put in there, but also third-party agents, and to create your own agents, so that if you are trying to do some kind of creative development and you want to test that and you want to share it out with certainly early customers and get feedback, you can build in that workflow. And certainly the partner marketing is an area that I've seen be much more valuable, because almost everybody, as you're going to market, you never have all the resources yourself as a startup, so you need partners some way. But to create custom partner programs, if you have a marketing team of 5 people, it's way too labor intensive. So to be able to create an agent, or even, agent might sound like a big word, just using AI to basically understand all of the partners go to market and take your go to market, connect them, and then create custom plans and custom use cases in Gemini Enterprise, or even dumping it all into Notebook LM and asking a whole bunch of questions about what would be relevant to this partner, then allows you to just move way faster. So I agree with you that it's like human in the loop everywhere. We're definitely not seeing yet this pure, just kind of like let it rip type of marketing, which would be a little bit scary right now and probably lead to a whole bunch of slop.
Yeah.
So, but I feel like it's getting better, certainly, every month, every week.
Yeah. One of the things I think every startup needs to evaluate is like whether they're finding success. So what are some of the favorite go-to-market metrics that you guys are finding so that they know that if they're heading down the right path?
Yeah, I'm going to jump in. I mean, so actually, how many people here are B2B marketers? Okay, how many B2C marketers? Okay, so it really varies quite a bit, and that's why I just wanted to make sure that it wasn't. It means when B2B, when you're looking more at cost per lead, cost per qualified sales opportunity, we're looking at, sometimes we look at, it depends how much of brand metrics matter, probably not so much for a startup, because it's almost like a luxury to have the concept of building a brand, but being able to understand perception metrics, some of those are really critical. And really trying to look at kind of full loop, just not even the qualified sales opportunity, but like cost per close one type, and looking at being able to be fully loaded with all of those costs as well. In B2C, it's, usually you're just getting right down to sales or like purchases and being able to see what matters. And sometimes you can find intermediate metrics too, about how many, in social in particular, how many reshares are out there, how are you expanding the audience of your own social channels, because that's one of the most important things to do, B2B and B2C, is building out that social following and using other people, other influencers one way or another to help do that, so you can look at some of those types of metrics as well.
Yeah, my world is B2B SaaS, so CAC to LTV by cohort. Certainly most important. I think you should always be thinking dollar in, two out when in anything that you're doing on the marketing side of the house. Obviously, there's a lot of experimentation, a lot of trial and error. But when you find a channel that works, double down, triple down, really get behind it. And a lot of those things will be seasonal and cyclical. So take full advantage of it while it's working, because one day it's working amazingly and the next day it doesn't work at all. And so you're going to have to continue to experiment, and then move on to the next thing. But CAC to LTV, and then do it by cohort, however you want to slice that.
Yeah, I would echo both of what you said, but I would add retention in the long run. I think there's a lot of applications being built right now, and some of the most scaled ones are consumer or PLG, where there's just a lot of individual purchase decisions, individual usage decisions. And so engagement over a period of months, retention are really top of mind for companies building with that model. And so that's a big one. And then there's something else, I guess. We've been seeing very small teams be able to scale through their community. I think you had touched on influencers and partners. I was chatting with the community lead at Lovable this past week, and some of their numbers were just sort of shocking. But this one person was effectively leading 300 hackathons in 6 months, all delivered by their community. And they see this community as really like the extension of the reach of the brand, and be able to reach tens of thousands of individuals who participate in hackathons. Some percentage of those go on to be kind of longer term users. And yes, there's AI behind the scenes because of what Lovable is as a product. They can actually build a lot of their own supporting tooling. But that amplification for a company that has a very strong consumer and PLG motion, I think is something that others can emulate if you have the same.
Yeah, the concept of kind of building for viral growth, which I know it almost sounds like an oxymoron to like build for virality, but I think I agree Lovable's a good example of that. And it's another reason to have really good social scanning tools where you see something that's caught on somewhere. For example, when we put out our Gemini model recently, there was this prompt that was going on where people were creating these like mini life-size versions of them sitting of like figurine that started in Thailand, that was picked up through a social monitoring and then found and be able to just kind of blow it out and expand. But being able to kind of add fuel to the fire when you see something that has any type of viral growth elements and then engineer that in so that there's sharing is really a super useful tool.
Yeah, PLG's just become incredibly important in your business, self-serve, PLG motion, whatever you want to call it. But it's not only just for the viral loops and the viral growth that you're able to get from it, but also as your company gets bigger, being able for people to self-onboard allows people to then self-support. There's so many different things that you can do from there that you don't need to hire you don't need to hire an onboarding specialist. You don't need to hire some of these other roles that kind of SDRs that fit into the middle of that. So I think actually the economics on the company overall look a lot better for the companies that have started from scratch PLG. And then one of the technologies that have really come around on in the past year or so is the AI BDR, so for servicing all inbounds. Companies like Qualified, Piper, and Intercom, Fin, some of the other vendors that are out there. It's gotten really good, and you can get really far for at least your kind of SMB and mid-market customers, and then even getting enterprise to a place where it's ready for handoff. So I've really found a lot of success with that in our portfolio.
Yeah, it's an important part when we were talking about one of the other metrics of return on ad spend and just getting the lead, but if it ends up being very expensive to cultivate the leads through SDRs and BDRs, and like constantly trying to figure out how to reduce those costs. And we talk about the concept of fully loaded costs, of ensuring they're like thinking all the way through in terms of what is each acquired customer worth.
Mm-hmm. If you have a leaky bucket, what's the point of filling it, right? So you need to make sure that your company is ready to be able to capture the interest and turn that into a sale.
Now, when you're kind of at that point, right, like Max, you mentioned onboarding specialists and stuff, right? These are problems that larger companies have rather than smaller ones. But when you do get to that point and you're looking at building a dedicated GTM team, like, what are you looking for?
Well, at a smaller company, you probably are having an onboard specialist. It might be the CEO of the company, but you're doing a lot of hand-to-hand. You want to make sure your early customers are very successful. And not only that, you're getting all the information out of them that you can possibly get to enhance the onboarding experience, the product, end-to-end, you name it. So there is a lot of that early on. I think, when I look at some of these more mature companies that are just losing money still left and right, you've got, folks who go through the entire process to become a customer, and they talk to an SDR, an AE, a solutions consultant, an ISR, which might be like a onboarding specialist, a CSM, and then a technical account manager, and then you might also have like an upsell person, right? Like it's very tough to have a profitable company when the customer has to talk to that many people along the way. So I think that's why it's very important foundationally to build it so that a lot of that is streamlined. And with Glean is another category of products now that you can almost do your entire knowledge base and search through, so take off a lot of support off your hands. There's just a lot of products today that now leveraging kind of all the information inside your product, but also externally, that allows you to do more with less.
Yeah.
Mark, I saw you nodding vigorously there.
Yeah, I mean, maybe to build on what you were saying, I think in the early days, when you're an early stage company, and by the way, I'm a former founder, so I've been in the founder shoes, have gone through the several years of kind of building go-to-market from scratch. I think there's no substitute for the founders kind of leading sales for as long as you can until it breaks, and the reason is partially for this of efficiency and sort of how do you build something that works as it scales, but even more importantly is just the product feedback loop has to be super, super tight. And we practice that at OpenAI as well. I think that's like one of the things for our go-to-market team that we try to be really focused on is this pace, the space is moving so quickly that one of the strongest things we need to be able to do well is actually take the signal from actual live customers using our products, our models, who are saying, hey, these 5 things aren't good enough, and here's where it needs to improve, and here's what it means for my product metrics when it's not consistent. We take that to product, to research, to engineering to go actually improve it. And that loop is one of the things we constantly are trying to get tighter and tighter. But for an early stage company, it's everything, because your whole product market fit is being driven by, are you building the right thing? Are you building something people want? Are you making it better repeatedly with a very small base of customers before you try to scale it, because you're going to hit a leaky bucket if you don't do that well. And so my bias has always been founders leading sales as long as possible until it clicks and you have something that you can repeat and bring other folks in who maybe won't be as strong on pulling the product signal out as you as the founders are, because they're not maybe have different skill sets, different backgrounds, and you want to like take that leap together. But until you get there, that product signal is just so critical.
Yeah, you've all been thinking about GTM for a while, and given how much has changed in the last couple of years, what would you do the same today versus what would you do differently from what you've done in the past?
Some of these things are just tried and true. You can read a couple of these books. I wrote a book called Hacking Sales. I think Aaron Ross from Salesforce, Predictable Revenue. A lot of these concepts, tried and true. I think some of the stuff that Alison was talking about before about marketing, psychology hasn't changed.
Right.
The way that we do some of these things are that way for a reason. I think how we do them has changed a lot, because you're just able to leverage technology in a way that you were never able to do so in the past. So I actually think like a lot of the playbooks and the strategies at a high level are very similar. It's really the tactics that have changed quite a bit and allow you to do more with less.
Yeah. Mark, what about you?
I think that's right. I think, I think of how roles have changed. I do think something that I would definitely change from how we've done in the past is like the SDR, BDR role, where a lot of the work used to be, kind of manually scraping the web and trying to find signals and find leads and contact information, all these different things. And now, if you're not using tools mostly powered by AI to kind of short circuit all of that, you're wasting time, and time is your biggest enemy as a founder. So that's really important. So that's probably the biggest one that I feel like is net different.
Yeah. Alison, what about you? We'll give you kind of the final word on this one.
Yeah, I would say I think it's a change in hiring perspective, where in the past it was more about hiring specialists, people who really knew, sometimes even like a subspecialty within marketing or within sales, and now it's hiring for a sense of curiosity and understanding and being able to understand how something can change and how to scale up. I mean, the learning curves are so vertical right now in all of our companies, probably for everyone here, and people who have the capacity and the interest and the desire to learn and change, learn and change, learn and change. And it's a mindset difference that I think might have not been quite as critical years ago, which is essential today.
Yeah, a little more flexibility in the team.
Yeah, it's just that kind of this mental agility is almost like the top thing to hire for.
Yeah. All right, well, we have a few moments here for questions, so we're going to have people running around with some microphones. Please raise your hand if you have questions, and we'll get a microphone to you. So we've got, for sure, one in the middle here. All right, if you could, yeah, please stay standing while you ask the question.
Hi there, my name is Marc from 248AI. Sales is a super measurable business function. Are we going to see outcomes-based pricing where software companies will take a cut of the sales that they generate? Is that already happening? Or if it hasn't happened, why do you guys think that hasn't happened yet? It seems like a very first principle sort of evolution of how software is priced, especially in sales.
Yeah, we're an investor in a company called Paid.ai. They do billing, margin management, metering for exactly the use case that you're talking about. I think they should. I think any good company would stand behind their product and say, okay, we're going to charge you based on this outcome. I think bad companies will say, hey, we want to keep charging you per seat because we can, and you're overpaying for it. We'll see how many of those companies want to stick to their seat-based pricing and won't stand behind their product. I do think with the amount of technology that's being invested in today that there will be competitors that come out that will stick to outcome-based pricing because they do stand behind their product. And customers will tend to go towards the ones that are charging them for the outcomes because they can actually look at it and say, I'm getting charged X and I'm getting back X times 2, right? So I think it's inevitable that we'll go in that direction. I think adoption of that may be tough early on.
What's making it tough, do you think?
I think there'll be incumbents that are scared to stand behind their products from a outcome-based pricing.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the things that, not to get political, one thing that came out of the Doge thing was that like they were paying for 5,000 seats of service now or something like that, there was like nobody in seat. And that was just like a long list of products. And if you've been in a company before, you know you've signed up for a certain number of seats, those people leave, now you're paying for those seats that nobody's in them, some people are using them every day, some people are using them once a week, some people are using them once a month, and you're paying for these things the same way. So I think ultimately we now can go in that direction, so why shouldn't we? Products are being built to support that, so I think that's where we'll end up going.
Or at least there'll be variable pricing where you might have even somewhere you offer, a frontline worker type of pricing, which is different than more of like a knowledge worker type of pricing. And I think we'll start seeing some of that variation, and it'll be easier to manage in that way we're set up today.
Yeah. When I was selling outreach, this was one of the biggest issues. If my software is successful, then I'm going to make your team more effective, more efficient, and therefore you can hire less reps, which then I would have to charge you less because I charge per seat. I should charge you more if we're doing better for your company, right? So if I charge you by the outcome, then you would pay us more, and you would win because you know you're only paying when you win, right? So that all of this was out of balance, and it's like that for every company that's charging by the seat. So I think this will be fixed in this in the next couple of years, but we'll just see how fast.
Did you have anything to add, Marc?
Yeah, I was just going to say, Sierra in the customer support space is a company that's doing this today. I think that category is probably one that lends itself really neatly to outcomes-based pricing. It can be harder in different verticals where the outcome is a little bit murkier to say, how do you price this? How do you, measure it? But that's one where we've actually seen that happening already.
Do we have another? Yeah.
Hey, Charles Cohen with Cybernet. You've convinced me to use these AI tools, and it's really important to do that. But I get 837 emails a day from companies that say they can solve all my problems using AI in business development and all that. How do I not get scammed? Do you have any advice on where to go and what to use? Thank you.
Step one is always reference checking any type of new tool that you use. And so I imagine there's no way you're even able to parse through all of those emails. But I think that the startup communities, many of you are probably working with VC firms or working with other communities. Step one is just learning and talking to each other here and finding out what's working and what's not working. And then you can go back and search your email to go find out how many times that company maybe has sent you some offer or something there. But it's rarely, I think, is a cold email going to be the way that any of you are probably going to be picking your first tool for anything.
Yeah, I think trust comes through your peers. So, what are your peers using and going through that. I think kind of one of the things that came out of the 2021 era where we all went to work from home is that a lot of these things became recorded and posted online. So there's probably everybody you want to hear from has some sort of webinar or podcast episode that you could listen to where they start to talk about their stack and things like that. If I started to go through an entire list of products without any context right now, we don't have time for that, but certainly I would understand what your peers are using, you know, do an audit on your process. Where can you use technology to fill gaps and what you be looking at there, and maybe whittle it down a little bit so that you know kind of where to ask questions. And then there's so many of these founder communities these days, Slack groups, things like that, that you can kind of post in and start to get an understanding of kind of what's a scam versus what's actually working.
Yeah, and I would check in all of the marketplaces. Any of the big companies, Google Cloud is a marketplace, but I'm sure you do. Everybody does. Those are usually been verified and reviewed, and they're credentialed. So check that they're showing up in the big company marketplaces as just kind of a core, I don't know, stamp of approval to some degree, because they've certainly been reviewed in that forum.
Hi. Got a question here.
Over here.
Hi, Fauzan from Coffee Space. So if we're talking about GTMs that's primarily using messaging, email, you know, the first sentence that was said has AI slop killed email. I personally don't believe that, because there should be a way in which personalization can get people to convert. And the people who are on stage are probably the best people to talk about this. Do you know what attributes of personalization that makes AI stand out above the rest? Because I'm personally tired of I feel like I'm being surveilled almost by this level of personalization, but I'm sure there are ways that it could still be effective, and I'm curious what you have to say about it.
So how to not be creepy, basically.
Well, you know, I'm trying to be cognizant of your sponsors here, but there's like, you know, there's AI SDRs now where you push one button and sends out more email than you could ever do previously. So there's always going to be more noise now than ever before. I think when you look at kind of the anatomy of a good email, like first things first is deliverability. Like, have you done warm-ups? Have you transacted emails through this email address before? Is this going to be caught in spam filters? The second thing is, even before you get into the copy, the body of the email, somebody has to open it. So the subject line has to be relevant to them. So you have to understand what are the pain points of this business, or what's actually relevant to that individual, so you can get them to open the email. And you don't want to do it with a trick. You don't want to do a quick question or a fake forward or something like that. You want to do it honestly and make sure that they intend to open that email. And then there's the body of the email. So what I've seen from a lot of the AI companies that create an email for you is it's actually not really AI. It's like an if-then statement. And it'll be, hey, first name, personalization from LinkedIn. So like, I see you went to Duke, go Blue Devils. Second line, here's something about your company. Third line, here's something about my company that connects to your company. Fourth line, salutations, and then like click send. And that just looks very impersonal. I think at this point, 2 years into this, what we're calling AI slop, people don't really want to open that. So I think the first thing is making sure you have the right person that you're sending it to, the right ICP, the right type of company that actually has the pain that you're solving. That first and foremost. And then second, writing a genuine and authentic message that applies to that person, that is going to solve their problem. And try not, yes, it's great to have some sort of personalized line at the beginning of it, but it shouldn't just be something out of nowhere. It should be, hey, I saw you spoke at this conference, really liked your point on X, Y, and Z. That's at least more personal than something that you can just take off somebody's LinkedIn page and then replicate across a bunch of messages.
So Max, you're going to now get 5 of those.
I'm going to get 1 million of them anyway, so.
Yeah, maybe 50.
All right, I think we have time for one more short one.
Hi, I'm Olga, and my question is, Mark, you mentioned the communities as one of the ways how we can actually do GTM, and I think it's our solution in the era of AI that genuine connections and communities will really help us. And my question is to you and to Alison, do you do something similar at OpenAI and Google Cloud with communities for your maybe clients, or partners, or someone else? Yeah, thank you.
Yes, we do. We invest a lot, especially from our team. We're startups-focused team, so we spend a lot of time in founder communities. That's sometimes working with VCs and their portfolio companies. We spend time in other organizations where founders are aggregating. We're increasingly spending time at universities where there's entrepreneurship happening and founders emerging straight out of universities. So it's a really big part of what our team does. And I think like being present in person, being able to work on hard technical problems like literally side by side, being able to share best practices, hear feedback from teams. We've also built a team that's mostly ex-founders actually and former operators. So that kind of connection is super important to the work we do and is like core.
Yeah, in addition, so we certainly have our own communities too with our Google Cloud for Startups program and our broader Google for Startups program. We also do some third-party communities. Like for example, right now we have a community shared with NVIDIA for people building, so we've done that. We also spend time in communities like in Reddit communities, if there are subreddits about Google Cloud. We're sure there's people from our DevRel team or others that are spending time there because we don't expect everybody to always come to our Google Cloud hosted communities. We want to make sure that we are out there where everybody else is hanging out and being able to answer questions or help point people in the right direction wherever people are.
Excellent. Well, that's all we have time for today, unfortunately. I'd like to thank Alison, Marc, and Max, and you for your time. Thank you.
Thanks.